Hello, everyone. We're just sitting out here at the dam and we're having a picnic and enjoying some time with my daughter and granddaughters. And so we was just going to sit here and have a conversation together. And we're just going to talk about how that Satan just kind of baits us at times uh, with offense, trying to be offended at somebody. And of course, the Bible talks about we're going to be offended. We're going to be offended, and but we can learn how to deal with it and not let it disrupt or damage our relationships. And so that's what we're going to talk about right now. And whether or not it's in our families or whether or not it's at work or school or whatever, we all have an example of being offended. And so I'll just give an example, and maybe y'all might think of a time that maybe the enemy caused you to be offended. And mine was I worked for someone a couple of times during the last 12 years, and I realized that I didn't realize that I had an offense toward the board, not necessarily toward the board members, but just as the entity of it being a board. And I thought, because I thought usually I want to try and get rid of any kind of offenses that come up, especially if it's against people. And so I had a chance to go to a board meeting that I hadn't been to because I don't no longer work for uh, um, this place. And so I went and I was just going to sit in, but at that time I started feeling something come up and didn't really realize what it was. And I was thinking, well, I'm not offended at anybody here. And so after I got home though, and I got into prayer about it, because I thought, I feel like it's just sitting on my shoulders, or it's just all over me or something. I just felt it. And so I was talking to the Lord about it, and he showed me that I had an offense against the board, not necessarily somebody, but just against the board on how they dealt with things or did things, and it wasn't something really, really bad, but it was something that I still carried an offense about. And of course, they've worked most of those things out now anyway, but I didn't realize that I had that in my heart until I was faced with that situation again. And so I think sometimes we don't even realize we're offended at somebody until we're face to face with them again, or something happens. And so what happens is that offense comes in, and if we don't get rid of it, it causes a root of bitterness. And so now that root of bitterness is in our heart, and if we're not careful, then that affects all of our relationships, because bitterness is not just, when it comes in, it doesn't have just a pocket. Well, I'll only be bitter at this person here that I have that offense at, but now that root of bitterness is going to affect all of our relationships. Just like we was talking about, whether or not it's anger in us, or whether or not we build up walls and different things like that. It affects everything. So do either one of you have a time that you realized that you was offended at somebody that you didn't really know that you was offended at until you was face to face with them, or company or something?
Um, well, I I had a friend, and we used to be really good friends, and there was a lot that happened, and we decided to go different ways, and I would pray for them and different stuff like that, um, for a change in their heart, and I really needed a change in my heart, and in my way of thinking, to take away that bitterness and that offense from them, to where I could go on and live and not be offended every time I saw them, or bitter just hearing their voice or different things like that.
Isn't that amazing how the Holy Spirit we go to the Lord to pray about them? Well, would you do this for them and do this and make them do this, and then the Holy Spirit leads us back, and He always comes well, what about you? because they're out here, you know, we want to let this offense off of us. I mean, it might not even be on them, right?
Right.
And so it's affecting our life, not necessarily their life. It's
Mhm.
affecting us. And so, you know, you just proved what it was, and so that's what the Holy Spirit also showed me, that I needed to pray for them to be blessed the way that I wanted God to bless me.
Mhm.
And as I did that, then that also helped relieve that offense. But it's also, you know, all we have to do is just be truthful with the Lord, and just be honest with Him. He knows our hearts anyway, right? And He knows how we're feeling. He
Mhm.
knows how our minds work and everything. So, what about you, Angie?
So I've got a maybe a situation in my life that's more broader spectrum, and it might be a combination of what you two are talking about as well. In that, um, for a time, I got offended by nice people, and not necessarily to where I would hold on to that, but it was hard for me to warm up initially when he met someone that was truly nice or presenting themselves as
So
being
it was
nice
truly a nice
personality.
person, not just somebody acting or being overly.
Well, I think that probably what gave me that offense was dealing with people that were trying to present themselves as being a relatively nice person and caring person, and then they would turn around and not be,
Mhm.
really be negative about people that they met and situations that they were in, and it's like they wanted to present themselves that way, but in trueness, they weren't
Mhm.
what they were presenting themselves to be. So then I noticed that, well, then I had my guard up, and anybody that I met that came across as being a nice person, then I would keep that guard up for a long time, and I felt like they had to prove to me that they were a nice person.
If you kept that guard up and said, okay, I'm not going to deal with the ones that's really trying to be something they're not, and I'm not going to deal with the other ones because that way I can just not deal with it at all.
Right. So it led into me just really trying to avoid people in general.
Mhm.
Whether they're nice
Mhm.
or mean or whatever their case may be. And then I started noticing that he was making me something that I wasn't.
Mhm.
Well, all of a sudden, I'm not a nice person.
Mhm.
Why is somebody going to want to approach me
Yeah.
because I'm coming across as so standoffish and really putting out that vibe, don't come near me type thing. When in reality, that's not what I want. It is in me naturally to want to be nice to people, to care for people, to want to help people. And so for me to turn myself completely around into being the thing that I hated, that I didn't want anybody to be, that just shows how those feelings can really sneak up on you.
Mhm.
And you can become the thing that you don't want to be the worst.
Mhm. I remember talking to this gentleman. Of course, y'all know that I was a director of the homeless shelter, for years, and so this older man came in, and he was a senior, and he was probably in his 80s, and he was just heartbroken, but he couldn't pay his rent, and he had to come in there for a while until he got his next check and everything, and so I was talking to him about it, and he says what happens is his children or his grandchildren, they come when he gets his check, and then they asked him, okay, can I have this or can I have that? And he cannot, he can't, he said cannot say no. He could not say no. And so what he was getting ready to do was he was getting ready to move out of state, even though he loves his kid and loves his grandchildren, but he was getting ready to move out of state because he could see himself doing that easier than he could saying no, and then them maybe turning away from him, or he was afraid that he would lose their love, so he would rather just go out of state and not be around for them to ask. And so it was causing him to do something that he didn't want to do because he did not know how to um, talk to him. He didn't, and he didn't want to risk seeing that they really maybe don't love them at all.
Right.
And so so what it comes down to is we could sit here and talk about all kinds of situations that everybody has them. I mean, we could probably sit here and think, and we probably got more than these that we're even talking about. So what it boils down to is that we have to take care of ourselves. We have to be able to be, to love like God calls us to love. But there's communication skills, and there's stepping out in trust and faith. Okay, well, I might get hurt, but it's a whole lot better to risk that than what you start becoming a hermit and not being able to feel any of the good. Because if we put that block up for everything, then we can't feel.
Well, I feel like we have to make boundaries, but we can't put up such a big wall that nobody can get over it.
Yeah.
And so we need to figure out what is good and what is bad, but not to set such a big wall that can't be broken down.
Yeah. Because if you've got ones that's trying to take advantage of you, and then you've got another set of people that doesn't, then there's going to be one set of boundaries that you're going to have with those one that you may not have with the others.
Mm-hmm.
And as you, I don't know about you, when the kids are little, and you won't let them drive a car at 5 years old. So there's certain things that they can do. So there's certain boundaries that they have to, even though they want to, and they get mad at you because they can't do something, or do the same as an older child can do or whatever. They get mad, but you still have to set those boundaries, and you still have to say no. And but I think it all comes down to where we really want everybody to like us. But everybody didn't like Jesus. They even called him a devil. And a drunkard, and and so we're going to be called names. People's going to be offended at us, and all that. But there's also boundaries that we have to set, and there's some people that are dangerous. And that's where discernment comes in. Discerning, okay, are they here to take advantage of me or not? And we can't come to the point to where we let everybody in their life that's going to hurt us if we need to put those boundaries up just to have friends. Because
well, I can tell you, for me, I've come to realize that you're going to have your bad people that you want to stay away because they do truly have intentions that aren't good for you or healthy for you. But then you've got your people that they're good people, but they really have either some bad habits of how they act or how they portray themselves, how they speak. So then you have to learn what their weaknesses are.
It's more of character than
Right.
it is actually of just being bad-willed.
Right.
Yeah.
And so then you have to learn what those boundaries are to know that this is a weakness of theirs, so therefore I have to set a boundary just so that they're not constantly portraying that weakness toward me.
Mm-hmm.
And it will eventually emotionally affect me.
Yeah, because if they can't control it for themselves, they're not going to be able to control it with you neither.
Right. And I think, talking about offenses, a lot of us too, a lot of times we can only see ourselves. So we only know how we act, how we see things, or how we react. So when we see other people make a certain face, or we see them react in a certain way.
We think they're thinking the same thing we would if we did it.
Right. In reality, usually everybody's circumstances are unique, or the way that they handle themselves is unique. So when you talk about it, if you get a chance to be able to talk about it with someone that you feel like you're around them a lot, you need to settle whatever this is that you're feeling, then usually that helps to better understand that person, and it will naturally take care of that to where you're not feeling offended when they react a certain way.
And do you think that, I know that, like me with my job, I had a very stressful job, so I had to start learning how to have boundaries and different things like that. And, I know that you've had stressful jobs in the past. Do you think, and I know so with myself, that being under stress magnifies everything. And at times when we're going close to burnout, it causes us to want to get away from everybody and everything.
Right. Well, it's funny that you mentioned stressful work environments, because I went from one stressful work environment to another. I learned ways to deal with those situations and to keep myself at a better, mental state when I'm surrounded by that stress. But then I started running into situations to where people were being offended because I stayed calm. They wanted me to react just like they were reacting. So it was upsetting them. So it seems like no matter how you try to approach a situation and you're trying not to offend people, do realize that there's still a possibility that you might offend them. But you can't take that personally and take that upon yourself when they start coming to you and telling you that although you have good intentions, they're being offended. We have to understand that although I want to be able to have the openness and the freedom to approach someone else, I need to make sure that I understand that people need to have that freedom with me as well.
Yeah.
And understand just because we offend somebody doesn't mean we did anything wrong. It just means we need to talk about it and figure out how we're going to work together.
Yeah,
So.
because it can hurt relationships if you feel like you can't, if they feel like they can't come and talk to you and you can't go and talk to them, because then you can't tell them how you feel, and so or they can't tell you how they feel, and then that way it just kind of almost like it stagnates. There's that relationship. There's no progression. All right. You got anything else you want to share? Well, I'll tell you what, the one you was talking about, you handled that really good, because I was, around you and you was talking to me about it at the time and different things, and I know it's troubling and it hurts and it can be really painful. If you have to say, okay, we may have to just go our separate ways. In the Bible it talked about Paul and Mark having to go their separate ways because of either a disagreement, some things that was going on or whatever, and they had to go their separate ways, but then they came back later, and because Mark grew up some and he learned some more things, and so there may be people that we may part ways with, and then 10, 15 years or something, we may meet back up, it may be totally different because they've also changed to where you may not have to have the same boundaries with them, but anyway.
I think going back to what Cassandra was saying about looking into, you can't always change someone else or change that circumstance, but we can always change how we look at things. We can always look at ourselves and think, not that, not accusing ourselves of doing anything wrong, but how can I handle this and be able to move on with a happy life and not carry it with me?
Because it's not necessarily about right or wrong.
Right.
Because, we don't want to condemn ourselves, because the Word talks about, there's no, God, He didn't come to condemn us. The Holy Spirit is here to help us. And so I think one of the problems I had at one time is I thought, okay, I've got to take care of this problem right now, right now. And sometimes, and I can't do that because it's a progression, and we're growing everybody's growing at different levels, and there's things in me that it takes a little bit at a time to get me. And so when I learned the lesson, it's showing me, okay, I'm a little closer to my goal, but until I totally get probably to heaven, then I'm not going to be perfect. And I hate that because I really want to be. And I want everybody else to be perfect too, but really I don't even know what that looks like. So
We're back, and we brought these flowers for you,
perfectly them,
Granny.
Huh? Those are so pretty. Y'all want to come
We'll
back
come
here
over
behind
here
me and
so
say
we
hi?
can introduce you to
Yeah.
Go ahead and put the flowers
We
in the
got the
vase
video.
for
Come
us.
over here, Haley. Come here.
Hold on.
Yeah,
Let me
right here.
put-
All right. This right here is Brianna. We're recording, and Brianna was talking about being offended at people and stuff. Do you remember when you was offended the other day? You got hurt because somebody called you. What did they call you, or do you want to say?
No, I'm not gonna say.
You don't want to say. Can I say it?
Yeah.
Come here, come here. We know you're not. That's not what you is. That's not what you are. And I might have been called that when I was little. Somebody called this little girl a fat rat. Can you believe that? I mean, look how little. She ain't got no fat on her body at all.
This is bad.
But what had happened was the other little girl must have got offended by something, because we don't usually call people names unless we're offended, right? You know what happened?
I forgot.
Okay. Well, anyway, she was offended, and it really, really hurt you, didn't it? But then the little girl came the next day and apologized, didn't she? And so are you still upset with her? Anyways. So see, it happens. What about you, Haley? You want to come over here? Come on over here. You want to come over here and tell us about, you've never been offended, have you?
You're strong.
Anyway, this is Haley. I don't know if y'all can see it in the picture.
Hold
I don't
on.
know if she's going to get in the picture with us or not.
Hold on.
Are you?
Hold on.
Okay. Well, she's going to do something. Anyway, so I know that she's gotten offended before because you got red hair. No.
Yes, all of us redheads do
You guys
get
supposed to be funny?
get offended at some point in our life. That's for sure.
It's so funny because my brother was redheaded, and I never wanted any redheaded friends. Don't never. And so, but then in fourth grade, I got a redheaded friend, and she was really nice. I thought, wow. And then later on, you know, of course, I had my redheaded daughter, and she was really good. And I had my redheaded granddaughter, and then my best
Wait,
friend.
she was a redheaded?
Yes, and one of my best friends was also redheaded, Mildred, and so I guess when you feel that way, sometimes the Lord just
Also
sends
my
people
dad's
around
friend
like that, don't
was
they?
a redhead.
Oh, really? Anyway, so I want to thank y'all for being with us today, and you all have a good day.
Bye-bye.
Could you turn that off to that?